is thought? Can the thought process stop? Does it stop when you die? Or do you die when it stops? "I think, therefore I am," said the famous René Descartes quote. A questionable statement from many points, but that is the basis of all contemporary Western culture. That's how you and other civil societies were trained to see yourself. But what is thought anyway? When you watch some hilarious YouTube video, are you thinking? If not, do you cease to exist? When you're doing math, is it thinking? Is being awake from morning to night the same thing as thinking? Thinking is definitely something that a human does. Now we stumble onto an even more vague term. Human. Contemporary philosophers prefer not to use this word because of its vagueness. Just a single-time use of this word can ruin your academic work and reputation. For example, simple quotation of an ancient Greek philosopher: "We are humans, not pigs." This pretty innocuous statement can be heard or interpreted as "We are humans, you are pigs," and start a not very nice discussion if the author is a fascist or not, and so on.
Very hot topic. I may say something wrong and so on, but first let me make some things clear. When I criticize political correctness and multiculturalism, of course I am for multiculturalism. Of course I am for political correctness, but I think...
But the word was not always so vague. When the humans were humans, there was a definition. If there is a philosophical atlas who carries the whole of Western civilization on his shoulders, it is Aristotle. Whatever intellectual progress men have achieved rests on his achievements. Each day you go to school or to work, Wall Street trades open and close, police forces swatting some building, a machine at some factory makes toothpaste, bombs are falling somewhere in Syria, a barista serves a coffee. All that. The reasoning of all that was predetermined by Aristotle, so it's reasonable to check with him to find out what the term contemporary civilized human means. Aristotle describes a human as a zoon logon ekon, well known but an inadequate translation of "this is a rational animal." Firstly, zoon is not an animal like those we see in the zoo. Zoon is anything that is alive, and not necessarily something with fur, claws or flesh. Humans are alive. They are capable of moving, growing, and they possess, own, or hold logos. So zoon logon ekon is alive that has logos. Nowadays, it's believed that we are all human. The word "all" here is very questionable, but let's assume that it's correct, as according to the source, Aristotle, one is as much of a human as much as he owns logos, as much as he is capable to think. To understand what thought is, first let's give it a negative definition. So, what's going to happen if you take logos out of the equation? What kind of human will you have if you take the thought process out of him? If you take out his main and only human quality? You will just get a creature who is alive, zoon, or animal. Maybe it doesn't sound that bad, but take on account that the zoon part is an extremum of a human. Here is a simple polar scale. There are also pseudo 3D and pseudo 4D scales available, but for simplicity, let's stick with a 2D line. It's not an opposition of man and woman, or of good and evil, not an opposition of left and right, political directions. However, the opposition of political directions, projection or shadow of this scheme. That's why they have such difficulties and malfunctions when applied to reality. But that is not the topic of the video. The lesser the part of logos is in human, the bigger the part of zoon is, and on the extreme scale, a human fully devoid of logos is maximum zoon, clear vitality. The less you think, the more vital you become. Here you can see the roots of Leben's philosophy, philosophy of life, Nietzsche, and also most of the publicly accessible yoga practices. So once again, if you subtract thought from a human, you get clear, supreme vitality, absolute life. Absolute because it has nothing else than vitality in it, no thought. It's very important. Take a look at a human who is deep in thought. See how stunned and inactive he is. Then look at someone who is not so very smart. See how vital and alive he is. More stupid means happier, cheerful, always smiling, eats, walks, has fun, and so become attractive to others. So an ideally stupid man is an ideally alive man. Please note, we are not talking about mentally impaired, sick people who are low on thought and low in vitality. We are talking about normal, healthy people inclined to this direction. By the way, the idea of reduction of logos towards vitality is a primary subject of postmodernist studies. For example, major postmodernist French philosopher Gilles Deleuze openly speaks about a total emancipation towards vitality devoid of any logic. He not just speaks of it, he created a theoretical basis for that, and it will play out later in human history. A human devoid of logic will be a totally alive human, not really a human, as the word human does not apply here, but rather a beast. A beast is not an animal, as animals are at the zoo, in the forest, or at the farm. An animal is Zune that is owned by logos. It is not free of logos. A cat or a bird, logos owns the cat or the bird. An animal is under the control of its logos, unlike a human which owns logos to some extent. So when a human gets rid of logos, he does not become an animal, he becomes something different. Let's call it a beast. He becomes the beast that does not really exist in nature, as he is totally free of logos. A human is active towards logos, and an animal is passive. For example, a woodpecker can endlessly peck a metal pillar, as woodpecker logos has its limits and a woodpecker has no ability to modify it. Honeybees can memorize long routes, but if a beekeeper moves their nest a couple of feet away, bees will fly around the spot where their nest was located until they die out of exhaustion, having issues finding their home just a few feet away. Or, for example, a dog is totally under control of dog logos, its so-called instinctive programs totally oppressed. And you can train a dog so it will jump into the fire and die at the ring of a bell, not because the dog loves you or your country or any other nonsense, but because you act as a god to a dog. You can rewrite its logos. Programs are based on logic. Logic is based on logos. Unlike animals, a human has free will, and after some practice can be totally free of any instinctive programs. So when a human rejects logos, it does not become a dog, a cat, or a bee. It becomes a beast that is free of any logos. Owning logos means that a human holds a potential of metamorphosis to all animals. Potentially, he is a pantherian, essential beast, the vitality of which is infinitely higher than the vitality of any single creature. You all probably know the mystery of the beast in the Bible. Nowadays, Christianity in its original form has almost disappeared, but the beast, the thing Christianity tried to describe, has not. You all know the popular postmodernist meme of half human, half animal, all these rabbit tails, dog ears, cat masks, etc. It's a very popular meme because nowadays, in a postmodern world where logocentrism and thinking are not in favor, people slowly turn into animals. Not an animal that already exists, not a hybrid of a man and cat, but clear animal. Zune, the beast. Centuries ago, people were also wearing animal masks, but there was always a dimension of a mythology in their performance, a specific system. Nowadays, people don't know why they do it. They are free of that knowledge. Interestingly, according to Gilbert Duran, a newborn human child initially does not know that it is alive. A living creature is a synthetic concept, and every movement of a living being, such as gestures of his parents, a movement of a cat or a mouse, is a horrible experience to behold, as after contact with movement, which is contact with time, the newborn intuitively realizes his own impermanence. And as Duran says, there isn't anything more terrifying than a mouse that crawls in a dark corner and suddenly comes out to the light, right at that moment when you didn't figure out what is there yet, when it is just a black shadow that moves. Something alive pops out from nowhere. You experience the very same impression that a newborn gets when he sees movement for the first time and realizes his end. Despite the fact that a mouse is a beautiful and cute little animal, it can strike fear into a man, especially into a woman. This terror of seeing of a sudden movement, of a sudden scream, or when someone puts his hand on your shoulder is an experience of beholding that Zune, of something that does not have form, logos, but alive, of something pantherionic. That movement of a black shadow is the same thing as time. That's how we perceive time, through movement. And time for us, on the dimension of deep structures of human psyche called imaginary, is nothing else than death. When we encounter the element of time, we encounter our own movement towards death. And before human psyche transforms the moving shadow into a mouse or a cat, it's perceived as a living creature that can be anything but didn't become something yet. That's a beast that has qualities of all living creatures. That is why, according to Duran, the Sphinx, the griffin, or the dragon, which are portrayed as a mix of various animals, are in fact the same thing, but with different names in all cultures across the globe. And also this thing is more primary and more real than any living creature. Any living creature is just a small part of this original beast. Basically, the first encounter of a newborn child with movement forms an image and a challenge of upcoming death, which later forms the structure of human unconsciousness. The dragon, in fact, is more real for a human being than any animal, as the dragon is a synthesis of an undivided vitality untouched by logos. So when a human rejects logos, he or she moves towards the beast. So that is one of the sides of human nature, and a negative definition of thought of what you will get if you subtract thought from a human being. They say that humans are social animals, but they don't say what animal is. An animal is actually a big mystery, and if you subtract logos from a human being, you get this beast which blasts towards death. That is why the beast takes its huge role in eschatological scenarios and in projection of postmodern emancipation towards clear vitality, which Gilles Deleuze and Roland Barthes named as demonic texture, proclaimed to liberate human impulses. Not even human impulses, just impulses inside human beings, towards blind, non-formed, and non-repressive life, which does not hold logos and is not owned by logos. The ideal postmodern human is the human that does not hold any repressive instruments, which is thought and is not oppressed by anything. When your thought level is decreasing, you don't just become dumber or stunned as a mental clinic patient. You don't turn into a vegetable. A man can't turn into a vegetable. You turn into a demon or a dragon. And by demon, we don't necessarily mean the biblical figure. Demonic texture, described by Deleuze and Barthes, is an equally disturbing thing. It's not a joke. It's a serious scientific study with real-life implications. One of them, and the most innocuous, is the internet. An example of demonic texture is your internet browsing. You start from a video about puppies, then click on a banner and scroll some article for 10 seconds. From there you get on Reddit, from Reddit back to YouTube, and then on a do-it-yourself video, then another article about some celeb in a rehab, and so on and so on. You browse for hours. You are not really interested in any of these. There is no place for interest in that process, and it's so exciting, just as absolutely pointless. Internet space is designed that way. The weaker your thought process is, the closer you are to this demonic instance, closer to this energized, emancipated impulse of life. That's what makes the philosophy of life, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, and libertarianism in general so disturbing and dangerous. Despite being so attractive and sweet, one should remember what stands behind its last line.
Bullshit. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. I admire its purity. Survival. Unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
So that is the negative, privative definition of thought. The beast, the polar side of a human being, of a rational beast. Now we will give a positive definition to thought. Metaphorically speaking, logos is the power that holds the beast within limits, the power that holds the abyss of cosmic life. It should be clear that it's not just some chains or limitations that can be or should be thrown off just because it sounds oppressive. The pan-cosmic power of life is merely absolute, so try to imagine what power it takes to hold it within limits. Logos stands as something much more powerful, as the ultimate weapon against the greatest beast, as something simple wouldn't be enough. Monks and ascetics say that when they lived in society just like any human, they had to deal with the beast in its dispersed form. It manifests through the culture, family, colleagues at work, through friends, through the daily routine, all the things you love and hate. It's dispersed, scattered, and almost invisible. But when they leave society and go to a monastery, the place that is absent of women, politics, and entertainment, at some moment they suddenly notice that the beast, the abyss of life, didn't go anywhere from their life. Moreover, now in a clean environment, it manifests in its real form without a mask. Now there are no annoying family members, no idiotic co-workers, no government. All that idiocy we indulged in for 99% of our time were just his masks. Now the monk sees it how it really is. Pretty terrifying experience. Sometimes people try to capture their experience in the form of paintings. However, sometimes a human dies instantly. The beast comes in his real form. The monk tries to fight him, and quickly he realizes that the beast cannot be defeated, not with the monk's personal power, as the beast is a fundamental element, its flesh, the energy of the world. So the monk comes to the conclusion that to defeat the beast in its real form, not the dispersed one, as when you deal with the dispersed beast, you may have an illusion that you're doing good. You hold yourself and not get succumbed by him. You buy Diet Cola instead of a regular one. You make yourself wake up early in the morning, wash yourself with cold water, hold yourself when someone drives you mad. You do moral things. You do not steal. You do not rape. The beast is dispersed and your fight is dispersed, and it might feel that you are doing good. But when the beast comes in his full form, you realize that you are nothing. All your struggle is nothing. As when it comes, it washes you out as a tsunami because it's part of you. Its Zune in your Zune logo's icon is basically you. The monk realizes that he can't overcome the beast without logos. That's an important part of our analysis of what thought is. The thought is super or overhuman phenomenon, something as powerful as the beast is. Thought exceeds human abilities, and moreover, thought and thinking is not a human quality. The thought is what makes a human a human. Thought, or logos, is not thoughts that you have in your head. It's not what you experience when you watch a YouTube video or are doing a math equation. All those things are products of degradation of thought in the abyss of life, the oblivion of initial absolute, like the smell of ozone in the air after a lightning strike, which has nothing in it that may indicate that lightning strike ever happened. It's like scientists say that thoughts are just chemical equations in the billions of neurons. It's all legit, but only to some extent, which is not a surprise, as Martin Heidegger, one of the biggest philosophers of all time, that worked on the problem of the oblivion of existence, said, "Science does not think." The scientific thought and its twin sister, the conventional thought, or the conventional wisdom, is a compromise, an artifact that paralyzes both life and thought, some critical point where thought and life almost cancel each other. Force of life fragments to tiny pieces, tails, ears, udders and whiskers. The force of thought fragments to meaningless chains of words. It's too routine, too social, too immanent and saturated with needs and impulses of life. All it wants is to study simple things, things you can consume, things that are available right here and right now. It doesn't want to go beyond its eyesight, that it blocks thought and at the same time blocks life. It produces nothing else than discourse, the chain of miser-dead pieces and fractions of something unidentifiable. This compromise is actually the world of a common man. Of course, there are no such persons in our subscriber list, persons that have found a sweet spot of normality, persons that are cowards for merging with the force of life or with the force of thought. A human does not have a life in the full meaning of the word, nor has he logos. A human is a place, and the process of this two ontological instances are continually fighting each other. Both of them ontological, both of them are the same kind. Logos and Zune are twins. Moreover, Zune is an element of thought, an element of light, only which converted its eternal stillness to movement, converted space into time, an eternity to temporality, impassivity to passion, all in absolute form. So the human is the product or hologram of this too, partially exists in eternity and temporality, partially in immortality, and partially in death. The problem, as you see, is much deeper and subtle than the simple human body dies and his soul or whatever goes to some place for eternity. All these sweet religious stories are just an attempt, a failed attempt, to catch the problem discursively. That's the big paradox of the two simple words as rational animal. When someone says a human is a rational animal, it sounds so simple and boring. It feels like you understand what it means. But in fact, we don't even remotely understand what is being rational, or what is being an animal. Nietzsche's famous quote, the famous definition of a human is, "Man is something that shall be overcome." Usually, we take it simple, like a human is a substance, something known, that should be converted to another substance called overhuman. But if you look at the line, you will see that the dot on the intercourse and intersection of the two antagonistic forces is not the dot. It's a whole line, as the dot exists only logically within the line and does not have its own existence. And Nietzsche's quote looks absolutely differently now. A human is not some dot that shall change its position on the line. A human is the process that shall be overcome itself, the process of two twin but polar elements contradicting each other. And as much as the process of overcoming is active, as much as a human is a human. A human is a dynamic balance between the two antagonistic forces. A human is a process. The possibility of choice between this two, an invitation to solve this problem, this drama, and finding a sweet spot in between where you don't have to make a choice, does not make you more human. It makes you less human. Without the decision, without making the foundational decision on Scheidende, the German term and the main element of Heidegger's philosophy, we will just fail our lives. And there is no guarantee that we will have a second chance. Some teachings say yes, there is reincarnation and another chance for realization as a human. Some say that you get one chance to become a man, and you have to realize it now. We don't talk about final realization, the reconciliation of life and thought, that is available only to the highest initiate. For a human making the choice, the initiation is already the realization. So make sure to subscribe and share this video wherever you can.
Last word. I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.